The easiest tip that you can follow to avoid an absolute nightmare when buying a home is to watch this video. So oftentimes home buyers are thrilled, excited to run out, go look at properties, jump into the home buying process and buy just absolutely anything that looks pretty on the outside without doing the proper due diligence. They're never coached to slow down a little bit. They're never advised to make sure that they're watching out for some of these monstrous issues that can absolutely burn them, not only financially, but also get so serious as to do things like ruin entire relationships. In today's video, we're going to cover 5 mistakes that if buyers ignore, they are basically setting themselves up to lose thousands and thousands of dollars. And the last one on the list is so risky that we recommend our buyers avoid it at all costs.
You only get one chance to buy or sell your next home. Let's get it right.
Home buyers want to get it right, and so often they're left to their own devices to make decisions and aren't guided properly through the process to make sure they're avoiding super expensive and unfortunately relatively common issues that is going to burn them later on in the process. Selling real estate since 2007, we have built our business model around educating home buyers just like you to make sure that they are informed and able to make the absolute best decisions about likely the most expensive investment they're ever going to make in their entire lives, which is their next home. Now, truth be told, oftentimes a lot of these, they want to overlook some of these issues. They want to breeze past them, nor do they know the significance or the weight of them. So let's get into the top 5 issues right now so you can be a better home buyer and you can avoid spending money unnecessarily or breaking the bank completely. The first one is for all of my condo or townhome buyers out there. And if that doesn't apply to you, check out the chapters below and just skip to the next one. But this is an example of where home buyers get stuck with a bill for thousands and thousands of dollars, sometimes even tens of thousands of dollars with monstrous assessments because they just simply don't understand what they're getting into. They don't have appreciation for the strata document package, a whole package of documents that tells you everything you need to know about the building that you're buying in. And the biggest mistake that they make is they focus directly on the unit they're buying without considering that they're buying into an entire building. You know, you need to think of buying into a strata very similar like buying into a business. There's financials, there's pros, cons, problems, and challenges that business is experiencing, and you would never move forward with purchasing that particular business without doing the appropriate due diligence. And buying a strata is exactly the same thing. The 3 biggest mistakes that we see buyers make when it comes to strata documents, other than just generally not reading them and relying on other people to go through them on their behalf, well, the first one is insurance. Insurance premiums since 2020 have absolutely skyrocketed, and so many buyers are finding themselves either underinsured for potential issues that might arise with their strata, or they're simply finding that the monthly carrying cost for all the insurance that they need to buy to remain protected is simply inefficient and inadequate. The second is a document called the depreciation report, basically a 30-year planning tool going over the entire inventory of that particular condo or townhome complex, and also identifying the major components of that complex, what their estimated life age is today, what it will be when it expires, and what the cost will be to replace it when that time comes. This document also goes over the funding models the condos or the townhomes follow currently and recommends what they should consider doing to make sure they're adequately funded. You might be completely blown away to know that it's estimated that well over 95% of the condominiums in British Columbia are severely underfunded when it comes time to their contingency funds. This means when things like roofs or windows or elevators or parkade gates or whatever it may be, whenever something goes wrong or something needs to be replaced, well, the people that live in that complex are having to pull out their wallets to pay for these issues rather than having that money saved over time through a strong contingency fund. These depreciation reports are meant to help you avoid having a huge surprise financially later on in your ownership cycle of that unit. The third problem with not understanding the strata documents is not actually understanding what is not being said. So often we find that there's internal discussions with strata councils and the owners about the real problems and challenges happening within a building, but they don't get publicly listed into the minutes because they don't want to hurt their property and real estate values. Now, that is a terrible, terrible thing and a huge problem, but you need the right professional to help you dive into that information so you don't get any surprises coming up as soon as you become an owner. The second huge buyer mistake that we see all the time is buyers simply just focusing on the purchase price of the property without really considering other elements that are gonna cost them money. There's things like carrying costs. We talked about insurance as an example for stratas earlier in the video, but what about just general things like home maintenance, heating and energy bills, property tax, and general replacement of things that just simply get old, like roofs and windows. They also might just see a great deal out there and get so excited about buying that property without thinking about the resale potential down the road for that home. It could be in a terrible area of town, or it could have a really unattractive floor plan that's gonna hurt the resale value. Or maybe there's tons of community development coming, but not in a positive way to the area. In fact, we did a whole video on 5 things that completely shatter real estate values that people don't pay attention to. And the other part of that too is the asking price. Well, it could be really high or really low, but that's important to know because you could negotiate a deal on a home just simply based off the asking price. Imagine $50,000 off the asking price, and you think you are the best negotiator that has ever walked the face of this planet negotiating on a home. But the problem is, well, what if that home was overpriced by $100,000 and you just overpaid by $50,000? You need a strong real estate team or real estate professional who's going to help advise you on what the right price is in terms of market value for that property. You certainly don't want to overpay for the home, but even if the home is underpriced, you also don't want to lose it to somebody else because you're not paying attention and not moving quick enough. Since in this video we're talking all about saving money, it's worth mentioning that in the description below you can get your hands on 21 grants, rebates, or incentives available to home buyers and homeowners. Just like you watching this video, there is a ton of free money out there available from different levels of government. So we've got it all in one easy to read document. So there's no surprises. It's not hard to find anything, and you can take advantage of getting all the free dough that's out there right now. So if you want it, it's down below in the description. The third on our list is one that has bothered me for my entire career. And this is where I've been watching home buyers use assessed values for properties like they are gospel. If you're unfamiliar with what an assessed value is, it is a number that is determined by the BC Assessment Authority on a property for taxation purposes. So it's there to help the municipality collect taxes based on an estimation of what they think everyone's property is worth. So everyone's paying their fair share in the community. These numbers are calculated by a BC Assessment Authority employee, typically sitting in front of a desk running numbers. They're not visiting the interiors of these properties. They're usually not visiting the exterior of these properties, and they are just doing this for taxable purposes. But for whatever reason, for years and years and years, buyers use this as gospel to determine the price of the home. By nature, at the time the assessed value is released in January, it is almost nearly 6 months old. Using an assessed value to figure out the market price for a home is like using a July forecast for weather to plan a winter ski trip. It just doesn't work, and it just doesn't make sense. To give you an idea of how all over the place assessed values can be, I pulled a random list of 11 properties that had sold in the last 30 days in South Surrey and White Rock between the prices of $1.5 to $2 million. Now, while the average assessed value versus sale price came in at about 98.9%, the variations in the differences from the assessed value to the sale price came in as low as 82% below the assessed value and as high as 114% of the assessed value. So while the average was just shy of 99, you can see these were all over the place, and using the assessed value to determine market value is a completely bananas way to try and figure out the purchase price of a property. You could end up overpaying by thousands. The fourth on our list is a fun one, and that's just where you write an absolutely terrible, offensive offer to the seller. Now, a lot of people buying homes, they get advice from everybody. Everybody's got an opinion. Maybe they're getting advice from a neighbor or a friend or a parent. But one thing tends to be true with a lot of people giving the advice to you is that those people have probably only bought maybe 1, 2, or 3 homes in their entire lifetime. So naturally, they're giving you advice based on their experience, but they also don't have a lot of experience to begin with. And let me explain explain why this is a problem. You typically will buy a home because you absolutely love it. You're not buying it because you're doing spreadsheets and running numbers. I mean, the home has to make sense financially, but buying a home is largely an emotional investment. You see yourself raising your family there maybe, or just living there long term. It's going to make you happy because of its location and everything that it offers. So you want to negotiate on this home and you want to get it, and you want to get it for the best price, but you get advice to write an offer that is so highly offensive to the seller that they look at it and they think either you are completely crazy and out to lunch, or you get them completely emotionally invested against you to make sure that you know that you are in the wrong. Now what you've done is created a seller who is now negotiating with you out of emotion versus practicality. Someone who originally wanted to sell their home and get a reasonable price for it, well, now they want to prove you wrong. Think of the dynamics of how challenging that is going to make for you to get a more fair or better price on the property that you love. This is why researching the price is so important. You know, for the people that think they're gonna hit a massive home run, let's say a property worth $1.5 million and they think they're gonna get $200,000 off of the price. Well, do you think that the seller would probably reduce their current asking price by maybe $100,000 prior to taking an offer so much lower than where they are if they were really in need of selling in a fire sale type situation? And what I'll add to that is at the time of filming this video, according to statistics released by the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board, when a property was listed for sale last month in South Surrey and White Rock, it was selling for just about 98% of its current list price. That means for that $1.5 million property, we used an example earlier, on average, they're only negotiating about $30,000 off the price. Now, of course, this isn't to say that you can't negotiate more than the average. It's just to let you know that you want to be careful about putting out highly offensive offers to people who you ultimately want to work with in the end. Now, at the start of this video, I had promised you one juicy mistake that we see home buyers make all the time that they should completely avoid, and for very good reason. Are you ready? Buying a property that has a tenant in it. So why do I say that? And look, if you're a tenant, this is certainly not being said to offend anybody, nor paint tenants with the same brush. But here's the reality for you watching this who is looking to buy a home that may have a tenant in it. You're looking at a property with a tenant in it, and you are writing an offer based on that tenant being there. That means by the time you remove your conditions and fully commit to that property, you have no idea in the condition that property will be left by the tenant, nor do you know that they're actually even going to leave at all. The tenant can dispute the vacancy notice. They don't have to get out if they dispute it. They could simply outright refuse to leave the property at all. And now this comes with court costs, bailiff costs, and even more headaches for a home buyer. They could destroy the property. They could take pieces of the property, like a refrigerator as an example. And who is going to necessarily know prior to you paying the seller all the money that you owe them for the property and completing on it, that that stuff has been done or has been taken, and then who is there to clean it up and deal with it and make sure you are made whole financially? Not to mention with some of the new legislation that came in 2024 from the BC government, you also have to give a tenant, pending they weren't planning on going anywhere, a minimum of a 3-month notice for you to be able to occupy that property, which means 3 months not only need to go by, but you also stand to lose your mortgage rate hold. And in an environment where mortgage rates are going up and down all the time, that could cost you thousands of dollars simply just by a small change in the mortgage percent. As you can see here, there is a ton of risks that we could get really deep into when it comes to a tenanted property. But there's also one more risk that I didn't really fill you in on this video, because the video coming up next does a deep dive into all the reasons why me and my team for years have been steadfast in recommending to our buyers to avoid new construction and pre-construction properties like the plague. This is certainly one, if you're considering buying, that you don't want to miss. So I'll look forward to seeing you over on the next video coming up next right now. Buyers never thought this was going to happen. And one of the biggest problems with pre-construction, most specifically pre-construction condominiums, is there were people buying these things that never should have been buying them in the first place.